Yeah, we're going to jump into it. I'm just going to go over a brief overview on how to play Rocket League. Just going to keep it pretty lighthearted and just show clips of times when I was playing and how much I enjoyed it. But yeah, in general, Rocket League is very much similar to other games that are based on cars and racing. You can control the car in a certain amount of ways, and then eventually you'll get to play mini games associated with cars. The most relevant one, of course, being soccer, which is soccer, and you're supposed to score a goal with the ball. But there are other ways of playing the game that are similar in style, but not necessarily the same sport. So let's just go over just some basics if you want to come into it. So, nice thing is you can always go into free play at any time. And in free play, what I typically do is focus on calibrating myself with their options. Now, the beauty of Rocket League is that there is a ton of options. So, definitely spend some time here. Look up what certain modes mean. So, here, for example, this training stuff isn't that important, but in gameplay, we want to turn off and camera the camera shake is one of the first things you learn to turn off because there are some cinematics that are built into the game. Field of view is important, but if you go too far wide out, you might not get the accurate touches that you're looking for because of the vision. But you can also calibrate distance, height, angle, stiffness, and so on. Steering sensitivity and aerial sensitivity, I typically don't go too high on these. I realize I should even go lower on some of them. Um, but it's been difficult calibrating these sometimes. Another thing you're going to notice is that you can start using this game as a controller based game versus a keyboard and mouse game. You could play this with keyboard and mouse, but I do find that if you map the key bindings similar to how you do in other racing games like Mario Kart or any racing game you can think of, it still pretty works pretty well in the long scheme. So I think there's no problem with switching on to controller if you haven't already. You're welcome to stay keyboard and mouse because I know people that are doing well with those. But in general, I think controller is more versatile, especially in a game like this where you can't move the ball so like jarringly. It's pretty predictable movement, and then you just learn the mechanics. Once you get a good feel for the controllers, I do recommend going out in free play and just testing out some general mechanics. Some of the first things people learn are just getting the ball on top of your car and learning how to deal with the camera toggling. Once you get a good feel of putting the ball on top of your car and moving around the field, you should really consider starting to learn general dribbling with the ball on its own, because in the game you have a lot of opportunities to stop the ball, and so it's pretty useful to learn to dribble once you have the ball stopped on your car. You can do things like flicks, you can also do things like pinches, you can do things like dribbling in the opponent. The possibilities are endless, and once you get a very good feel on how the ball's controlled around your car, you could start experimenting with the hitboxes that each car has and figuring out which car has the best feel for you. Personally, I picked the Fennec, but I know a lot of people like the original Octane, and now Dominus is also a pretty popular car. So I would recommend going to one of those three first, or just checking out any car. People have gone to very high levels in this game with pretty much any car because skill does overpower the hitbox at some point. So it's not like against the law to pick anything you like, but personally, I just stick with those three. Other than that, once you get a really good feel for your configuration of your car and what you want to try out getting better with, you should definitely start playing different game modes. I'd recommend the general 2v2 or 3v3 because it gives you a sort of mental map on how rotations should work between teammates. Of course, you can also play 1v1 and practice your solo skills and minimize your mistakes that way, because 1v1 is definitely the most punishing mode out of all of them. But in a way, it's more fun when you play with someone else because you can have passes. You can generally be more aggressive because your teammate should technically have your back, and you shouldn't put your teammate in a bad position. So, in some ways, like, you should know your teammate well enough to plan those kinds of plays. And especially with me, I'm very inconsistent with my shots, with my defense. And that's the fun of Rocket League. I think it's such a hard game to master that there's a lot of fun in learning a lot of the mechanics. And I will admit, like I spent so much time on this game that at this point I should be much higher level than I am. But in a lot of ways, I just use this as a comfort game. But I figured there are some really easy ways to get better at this game. First off, you should just embrace the goofiness of it. You are not going to be the only one that messes up. I promise you, past Grand Champ and even SSL, people mess up every single time. I mean, it's difficult because you have to learn fast aerial timing. You have to learn perfect ball angles. Sometimes your recovery is not on point. And those kinds of things like devalue the possession too, because you can be aggressive with the possession. So there are a lot of things to consider in Rocket League to get better at. I would definitely cover something like being more patient with hitting the ball. Make sure your touches are intentional eventually, once you get a really good feel on where to touch the ball. I would definitely also recommend learning how to shadow, which is generally a defensive method. You just have to defend against somebody that's attacking you, and instead of attacking immediately, you wait until they do a move, or you pressure the ball enough so that they don't really have an option to do any good moves against you. So the better you are at ball shadowing, the more likely you are to continue to play after you defend well. And that's where I believe a lot of my wins in counterattacks come from. Because if somebody tries to go all out for a goal and you defend well enough, they're out of position and you can punish them. So that's kind of like a general gist of how you would play it. Of course, at higher levels, people mess up less and less, so you almost have to expect them to score well or to do well. So at those levels, you definitely want to just be consistent on your recovery, which is also very slept on. Recovery is an extremely important thing that you need to practice in general, and there are a lot of ways to improve on that. One of the things I recommend just to get better at this game is the Olympic map. I believe it's Olympics 2. I'll go ahead and leave a link if I need to, but it's important that you get some sort of quantitative skill level for this game, and this does a really good job kind of like touching on all the important points of what you could do to get better at the game, including things like recovery, which there's a mini game for. Lastly, you only really get good at this game by playing a lot of these sort of team modes. Like I mentioned, especially something like 2s and 3s, you get a lot of team-based knowledge. Things like rotation, where you only really want to attack the ball when you're up to bat. You can't, if you're in a team of 3, for example, you can't all 3 be attacking the ball at the same time. That's known as ball chasing, and it does happen at every level. I tend to do it a lot as well, but that's because, especially if your teammates are they're more passive than the average teammate, then you have to step up to the plate. So it's this idea of rotation where if everybody is about the same level of aggressiveness, then everybody should have a turn-based idea where one person is the first one to attack the ball, and the second person is anticipating what the first interaction will be like. So, for example, if a 50-50 is predicted to happen, you can react to that by approaching the ball. If it looks like the first player can stay on the ball, they should typically stay on the ball until they're at a disadvantageous state. That's another thing. You want to be sure that you give your teammates space for them to create opportunities for you to attack. You should only really attack when you know that they're in a bad position and they can't recover properly from it to the point where they'll turn the ball over. So that's when you should generally start to attack. There are nuances to rotation, but in general, it's turn-based, and you should just be mindful that you should be on defense as well as offense and never just one-track minded. You're working as a team. So we don't have to go over too many other tips because that's enough for you to just practice the game and get good at it and have fun with it. But the only other thing I'd say is make sure you find a league of people that you play with that are around your skill level, because it'll be easier to learn as a team. That's why I also invite you guys to go ahead and play with me. I'll go ahead and play every Friday night, probably around 8 p.m. So if you're interested in joining me, I'll go ahead and set up a link on my Discord, and we can play some Rocket League together and improve as one.